In the latest chapter of Sakamoto Days, we finally break through basement floor 1 of the JAA prison, and we are able to get into basement floor 2, which is one of the most interesting settings that could have been put in a prison arc of all places, and it makes me really excited to see Yuto Suzuki is trying his damnedest to make the environments that we fight in as intriguing as possible. Not that I ever doubted him with some of the fights and choreography we've seen so far, but the idea of a desert existing inside of an underground prison with quicksand and everything, oh, sign me up. And on the way down to basement floor 2, we are introduced to not only this whole entire giant labyrinth, but we are introduced to a new buddy that is literally probably one of the coolest characters that Yuto Suzuki has introduced in a long time, and that's saying something with some of the crazy people that he's been throwing out lately. So last chapter is just a quick recap because we had a long break. We did finally beat Joe Shackles in the frozen warehouse of basement floor 1. Now, of course, Joe Shackles is not exactly order level, but he's as close to order level as you possibly can. He was in the group of assassins that directly reports underneath the order, as well as being one of the strongest assassins in that group. So for Shin to overcome him does mean a lot. And the way that he beat Joe Shackles too points towards the main reason why Shin is even here to begin with, which was the fact that he's trying to evolve his ESP, and not just evolve his ESP, but use it much more candidly in the middle of his fights. Because remember, Shin can't get any stronger physically. He has reached his peak. The only way that Shin is going to be able to level up now is by becoming his own fighter, stopping from emulating Sakamoto and turning in his new fighting style, which by attacking a guard through the wall with his cursed speech direct command and being able to turn off all the power to the frozen warehouse and then take advantage of the darkness and be able to find Joe Shackles with his anxiety and his thoughts, that's using everything you have at your disposal in a way that no one else can. In that short little scuffle, Shin and Heisuke also inspired our best friend Boyle to remember what it's all about to be hard-boiled. He finally stops taking the short end of the stick. He has been beaten down for the last year or so, however long the series has lasted since we last saw him, just getting broken by Joe Shackles and being reminded that he is a prisoner in a box. Whereas seeing how Shin and Heisuke were unbroken by Joe Shackles and everything the prison was trying to beat down into them, Boyd remembered that, you know what? He is that guy. And not only did he stand up to Joe Shackles and help Shin and Heisuke, but he actually fully convinced Joe Shackles to help bring everyone down to basement floor 2, which we love that about him. Even though Boyd is not coming with us and he is holding Joe Shackles hostage only until we get to basement floor 2 and then he's going back to basement floor 1, I feel a lot better knowing that he is not only much more confident in himself, but he is not gonna let Joe Shackles give him shit anymore. And he even tells Shin and Heisuke he's gonna be the one calling the shots on basement floor 1 now, which we love that boiled plot development. And they drop us off in basement floor 2, which is fully packed with a monitor that resembles the sky. It's very dystopian, and there's just a large desert. It's apparently one big labyrinth. How did this come to be? Because it wasn't built this way on purpose. Apparently basement floor 2, basement floor 1 were the exact same, but the prisoners on basement floor 2 just got super bored and sick of the normal day-to-day life, so they completely restructured basement floor 2 to become a whole world in itself. Boyle even mentions that there's rumors of it being an entire city, having a movie theater, supermarket, funeral home, you name it, all just in the shape of a giant labyrinth with multiple rooms stacked on top of each other, all moved around, not making any sense, to the point that Joe Shackles even says they don't know, one, how many prisoners there are on this basement floor, nor do they know how many guards there are, which sounds like a very inefficient prison if you're asking me, but okay. I mean, if you had to choose between everyday, ordinary prison life being trapped behind, a couple bars and in a small box, to Mad Max World, I guess Mad Max World would probably be a little bit more fun to spend your days. But this confirms that basement floor 2 is just gonna be one big free-for-all. Whereas before we had assholes like Joe Shackles that were calling the shots, we had prisons and a warden that was directing all of the prisoners. Now we just have utter chaos in this big giant landscape that can go from a desert to I guess, being an entirely different environment in the next room over. Again, terrible for a prison, but great for training Shin and Heisuke and making them stronger. Now, as Shin and Heisuke make their way out into the desert of floor 2, a shadow is watching them from above, but forget about the shadow right now, because we have met one of the, if not the actual badassest, if that's even a word, character that Yuto Suzuki has introduced to us in a longest time. And that's saying something, because some of these characters that Yuto Suzuki keeps bringing up are just very cool. But when I tell you that Tenq, this new guy that we just got introduced to, is everything you could ever want out of a character with a bow and arrow, certified badass, despite being completely naked right now and held up by a little newspaper, I guess, he claims that he was just robbed of all of his stuff. But when they're like, oh, they took your clothes too? That's horrible. He goes, no, never had any clothes to begin with. Huh? Super weird. Even Shin and Heisuke are kind of creeped out by him, but Shin, thanks to his ESP, is able to tell that he's not lying. He doesn't have any hostility. He's a wholly genuine guy. And surprise, surprise, supposedly he's here for the exact same reason we are, trying to find the JAA fortune teller. That's convenient. Almost too convenient. So, if you haven't figured it out yet, and that name didn't immediately start ringing off bells in your head, this Tenq is that very same Tenq from Alkmaar. Again, remember, we got that list of the remaining names of orphans that we have not met yet. And Tenq is the character that had the big box over their head. We weren't able to see what they looked like, but we do know that they are connected with Slur for sure. So not only do we get that reveal that Tenq is finally showing up, one of the other orphans we've been waiting a long time to see, but this kind of solidifies the connection between not just Tenq and Atari, but Slur and Atari the fortune teller. Again, the whole reason that Atari was put in basement floor 3 of the prison was because for someone that had a 100% success rate of predicting fortunes and predicting bad things that would happen, we even see her being correct, even though it's not always in the way that you think. Currently in the prison, she was wrong every single time when it came to Slur's jobs and the major terrorism that he was causing. So they figured, all right, you know what, Atari, you are clearly biased in helping Slur because you're right in everything else and wrong with him, so we're locking you up. If Tenq is looking specifically for her, sure, you know, maybe Slur is trying to get the fortune teller on his side, but with the context clues we already have, it's quite possible Tenq was sent to break Atari out of the prison. So remember, we did get that slight fortune of Atari mentioning that a knight in shining armor was coming to save her. And I made that funny joke about how we might all think it's Shin, but Heisuke is 2 brain cells over here. She might like him because Heisuke's too, you know, dense to predict some kind of weird parallel. But again, all jokes aside, it makes much more sense that Atari's fortune is throwing us off. The 3 lives dying ended up being 3 cockroaches dying. What if the knight in shining armor coming to save her, we think it's Shin and Heisuke, it's Tenq this entire time? Meaning, if so, despite the fact that Tenq is super friendly now and seems like a chill guy, if we find out that he is an enemy, or he's working for Slur, even worse, if we get all the way to Atari and then find out, this could cause massive problems. But not just because he's a villain and opposed to us. The main issue that I have here is Tenq, as I've mentioned before, is insanely powerful, and maybe that's just because he got a very dope opening and introduction here, but using this bow and arrow, Tenq effortlessly dispatches this group of bandits that are trying to rob us. Like, when I say effortlessly, I mean he straight up embarrasses them. Tenq blows a humongous hole through one of them and just clean headshots the other through the eyes, not even like taking a second to aim or shoot. Man is quick scoping. Apparently his bow and arrow is literally durable enough to block an entire sword, which I shouldn't have to say it at this point because it just happens every single time a new character comes out. But Yuto Suzuki's character design is peak. The pinnacle of Shonen Jump, I feel like sometimes. The way he is able to make people come off as badasses in only the first couple of panels of appearing is insane. Now, this chapter doesn't really cover a whole lot. It introduces us to Basement Floor 2, Tenq, and then we kind of move on. So while I don't have much to say, the end of the chapter focuses primarily on those super antlion hell brothers, but Shin is able to use his ESP commands to make one of the brothers drop Tenq's weapon, which again it does show that Shin is starting to rely even more on his ESP. So this arc is amounting to something in regards to Shin's development as a whole. Heisuke is questionably already at the level possible to attack and beat and fight an Order member. We've already seen him fight Kamihate. Shin is struggling with people just below Order, but if he keeps up this ESP, he might even become Order level. And maybe we can learn something from Tenq before betrayal occurs. While I could argue and complain that the person we're gonna be allying with in Basement Floor 2 is not a part, I'll take Tenq. He's cool. And the fact that he's essentially a ticking time bomb in regards to Shin and Heisuke finding out his allegiance definitely adds a lot of fun stakes to the prison arc. Not that it didn't have it to begin with. I'm really enjoying the prison arc because I think Shin as the leader, as the highlight of the arc, is holding up pretty well. He is doing a great job as the current main character, and I can't complain. I love seeing his interactions when Sakamoto isn't present, how he acts like somewhat of a badass, or he acts higher than thou for certain people because he knows the level that he's at. Shin is very confident, and the fact that he was able to beat Joe Shackles is awesome. And if he's able to beat a badass like Tenq at the end of this, I mean, that's all I need out of a Shin solo arc. Because I'm imagining the worst case scenario whatsoever, which is the idea that we put all of this work into reaching Basement Floor 3. Like, we put in all this effort, fight all of these villains that are probably gonna show up. We'll probably have a couple more big baddies before we get to the end. Imagine all of that amounting to nothing, because once Tenq and Atari meet up, they're like, oh, hey, actually, he's my knight in shining armor. You guys did all this work to find me? Ha, how stupid. See you later. And then Tenq dips with Atari, and Atari doesn't teach Shin shit. And wow. While I do think that all of the experience that Shin and Heisuke are gaining in this prison is invaluable and again will definitely help them reach the level they need to be to fight Order members, that would just be the biggest middle finger in our faces. So I think the most interesting thing that comes out of this chapter is just the amount of possibilities that Yuto Suzuki has set up. The fact that not only this current room we're in is a desert, but the fact that this is one big giant labyrinth and maze that can have multiple different environments of not just like different rooms, but clearly different biomes entirely. Who says we don't have an Antarctica room or like a desert tropical room? Or the point is that for an author that benefits from using his fights in crazy environments and always having some insane choreography that goes along with it, I am very interested to see not just a desert fight, but let's say we go from room to room to room and we start switching biomes mid-fight. I think the environment of Basement Floor 2 opens up a lot of possibility for fun, especially when you have a character like Tenq who is goofy, but is an insane badass with his bow and has already showed us that he knows how to style on people. I'm excited to see what he has to offer, not just for Shin and Heisuke, but for the story as a whole. Because right now, I think there's only one more Alkmaar orphan that we don't know about yet. So let's definitely see how all of this trouble irons out. And I will definitely be seeing you guys next week for the next chapter and seeing how Basement Floor 2 continues. Guys, if you haven't already, thank you so much for watching this far into the video. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, because I will cover Sakamoto Days every week for every chapter, as well as many other series that you may be reading weekly, monthly. Don't forget that I do a bunch of other videos on the main channel. Check that out. And yeah, guys, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.